Okay, let's start with chapter 9, verse 23. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now we may have done a bit of this before, but we're now going to be finishing finally our study of Avimelech, who is one of the least savory characters we will meet in the Bible, and he's certainly the worst of the judges. It really was not a judge in the normal sense. He was not appointed to save the nation, but he was a leader, and he was a leader who seized the leadership in a way that was very violent and very evil. And we're going to now be reading about how he comes to his end. I want to just remind you that he murdered his 70 brothers, okay, the other descendants of Gideon, that he is the child of a relationship between Gideon and a concubine woman in Shechem who probably was not Jewish. And he's a really nasty guy. We know that the youngest brother, Yotam, survives and comes and rebukes the people of Shechem and Avimelech for choosing him as their leader, and then he gets away. And the last thing that Yotam says, he says as follows, and this we're just going up a bit, verse 19, if I say you have this day acted honorably and loyally toward Yerubbaal and his house, have joy not, of course he's being very sarcastic here. He's saying they have not acted loyally in supporting Avimelech, but he says, have joy in Avimelech, and may he likewise have joy in you. And of course he has no trust, no faith that they will have joy in each other. But what he says, but if not, may fire issue from Avimelech and consume the citizens of Shechem and Beit Milo, and may fire issue from the citizens of Shechem and Beit Milo and consume Abimelech, which of course is basically saying, may you all kill each other or be consumed by this mutual destruction that will affect you all. Both Abimelech for what he did and the people of Shechem for accepting him. So now as we read the next story, it's very important to keep that in mind because we're going to see how all that plays out. So let's begin with verse 23. Then God sent a spirit of discord between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem. And the citizens of Shechem broke faith with Abimelech. So we see here how it all begins. Shechem initially were the ones who crowned Abimelech king. And now they don't agree so much with each other. And we're going to see already how Scripture tells us, to the end that the crime committed against the 70 sons of Yerubbaal might be avenged, and their blood recoil upon their brother Abimelech, who had slain them, and upon the citizens of Shechem, who had abetted him in the slaying of his brother. So in case we're not going to get it, okay, Scripture tells us, okay, what's going to happen now is actually, shall we say, divine judgment, okay, where everybody will get what they deserve. But when we see how it actually happens, it looks like it's very natural, okay? What happens? So first of all, it starts in verse 25, when we see the people of Shechem trying to prevent any taxes getting paid to Abimelech. So there's a bit of a rebellion going on here, but initially it's just a tax strike. It's not, it's not a full-scale rebellion, okay? And then we have this new guy enters into the field. His name is Gaal. Gaal comes in, and he comes into Shechem, and basically what he does is he starts making trouble. He starts saying to the people of Shechem, why are you worshiping Abimelech? What did he deserve to do it? Why don't we go back and be loyal to our own people? And what does he say our own people are? We, the Shechemites, we should serve Hamor, the father of Shechem. Now, if you recall, when we talked about Shechem a number of times in this class, and it's particularly clear here, even though Shechem is under Israelite control, it is clear that most of the residents of Shechem are not Israelites, they're Canaanites. And here we know this because who are they seeing as their natural leader? Hamor, the father of Shechem. Who are these people? These go back to the very Canaanites that Jacob met when it is Shechem, the fellow Shechem, okay, who's the son of Hamor, who kidnaps Dinah and rapes her. This is going back in Genesis. This is Jacob's daughter Dinah. So these are Canaanites. And we also discussed, we mentioned a few times that in the book of Joshua, when they talk about the cities that are captured, Shechem is not mentioned. And there is this idea that Shechem itself remains, they are at peace with the Israelites, okay, and yet they're still Canaanites. And there may be some degree of mixing between the Israelites and the Canaanites, okay, which one of the indications of that is the fact Avimelech himself, who is the product of a union between Gideon, a pure Israelite, and this woman from Shechem, who is probably a Canaanite. So, we can see that here even. So there is sort of a divide. It's not just a divide of the people of Shechem against Abimelech, but we're seeing the divide is coming back to, are we Canaanites or are we Israelites? Okay, and of course, Abimelech is a mixture. Okay, so this is really what's going on. Okay, now this is Gal getting them incited against Abimelech. But then there's a fellow named Zvul. Zvul is the officer of Shechem, and he actually is one of Abimelech's men. So he hears Gaal, here's what's going on. He serves as a kind of spy. He serves as a kind of inside agent on behalf of Abimelech. And so he hears what's going on. He hears that Gaal is about to get them involved in some kind of rebellion. So he sends a secret message out to Abimelech, and he says, you need to get your forces together, and I will make sure the coast is clear so that you could come in and attack the city of Shechem. Okay, and that's exactly what he does. Abimelech comes and he arranges his army around Shechem. Okay, and then we have this very interesting story in verse 35. Gaal, remember, Gaal is the one who's inciting in the rebellion. He goes out and he's with Zvul. And Gaal looks out and he sees Abimelech's army. And he says, oh my goodness, we're being attacked. Now, he doesn't know that Zvul is really on Abimelech's side, and although he should know, right? Because he personally said in verse 28, Gaal says, who is Abimelech? Who is Shem? Okay. And he says, it's this is the son of Jerubbaal and his officer Zvul. Okay, so he knows that Zvul is Abimelech's officer. So I'm not quite sure why he trusts Zvul or why he speaks to the people of Shechem with Zvul there. Maybe he's a bit of an idiot. I don't know. Okay, but that's what's going on. And so Gaal says, look, he says to Zvul, look, all these people, they're coming at us. And Gaal says to him, oh no. Zvul says to him, oh no, the sun's in your eyes. You're not seeing correctly. You don't really know what you're seeing. Okay. And this happens a few times and he's fooled. Okay. To some degree. So then he says, then Zvul replies to him. He says, where is your boast? Who is Abimelech? I'm in verse 38. Who is Abimelech that we should serve him? There is the army you sneered at. Go and fight it. So after he tells them the army's not really there, he says, well, if you really think they're there, go and fight them. Okay, so there he does. He goes, he takes a delegation of Shechem, and he goes out to battle Abimelech, but he doesn't really realize at that point how broad the army of Abimelech is, because of course Zvul has told him, you got to be prepared. And in the end, Abimelech defeats him. And we have verse 41, Abimelech stayed in Arumah while Zvul expelled Gaal and his companions and kept them out of Shechem. Okay, the next day, when people went out to the fields from Shechem, Abimelech was informed. Taking the army, divided into 3 columns and lay in ambush in the fields. And when he saw the people coming out of the city, he pounced upon them and struck them down. While Abimelech and the column that followed him dashed ahead and took up a position at the entrance of the city gate, the other 2 columns rushed on all that were in the open and struck them down. Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He captured the city, massacred the people in it. He razed the town and sowed it with salt. Now, what happens with you sow the ground with salt? Not only if you want to capture let's say you are an invading army and you want to capture a city or an area, okay? So it makes sense that you're going to take all the crops and take it to your army or take it to your people. You have an interest in controlling the food supplies. Well, what happens when you not only control the food supplies, but you destroy the land so it can no longer issue any food for anybody else? That's what happens when you sow with salt. You destroy the land. What does that mean? You don't care about the land. You don't care about the people. All you want is revenge. Okay. And that's something, by the way, that we see very much in Israel today. When you see people destroying things that are good, crops, buildings, things that are good, for the sake of destruction, when they themselves get no benefit from it, you have to wonder, are they really being motivated by a desire to change things, or are they being motivated simply by hatred? Hatred that doesn't serve even their own side. And I think this is what you see in Avimelech. In the case of Avimelech, I think this goes to show us how he is so deeply rooted in evil. This goes way beyond a power struggle. This is not just about, is he going to rule Shechem, or is Gaal going to rule Shechem, or are the descendants of Hamor going to rule Shechem? This is about evil for the sake of evil. Just let us destroy. That is what Avimelech represents. Okay, and then there's another group of people. Okay, we see this in verse 46. There's another group of people, and they go into this tower of Shechem. Okay, and so they're kind of they're in a place called Beit El Brit, and this is probably a pagan temple. Okay, because it's called the what it means literally as the house of the god of Brit. Okay. And we've seen there's all these different pagan temples in the area that we met before. So this is another one, but it's a tower. So they're going in, as you get the impression they're hiding up there to fortify themselves and prevent themselves from being taken. But he goes to attack them as well. Avimelech goes to attack them. What does he do? He says, first of all, he takes an axe and he chops down a tree, a big log. And he says to the troops that accompanied him, what you see me do, quick, do the same. So each of the troops lopped off a bough. Then they marched behind Avimelech, laid them against the tunnel, and set fire to the tunnel over their heads. All the people of Tower Shechem were perished. So basically, he burned alive 1,000 men and women who were holed up in this temple. Okay? Then he goes on to another town near Shechem, to a place called Tevetz. Okay? And then he occupied that town. And there's also a fortified tower where you have all the citizens of the town going out to this. They're trying to protect themselves. So they go to that fortified tower, they shut themselves in, and Avimelech comes and he attacks it. And what does he do? Again, he sets it on fire. He's about to set it on fire. And then look at verse 53. But a woman dropped an upper millstone on Avimelech's head and cracked his skull. He immediately cried out to his attendant, his arm bearer, "Draw your dagger and finish me off, that they may not say of me, a woman killed him." So his attendant stabbed him and he died. When the men of Israel saw that Avimelech was dead, everyone went home. So we have this major fight going on that absolutely disappears as soon as Avimelech's out of the way. And it's very, very interesting, because it becomes very clear then that we don't have a war from one type of people against another type of people. There's no war based on ideology. This is purely Avimelech's personal evil vendetta. And his decision is the capricious decision. Today, I want to destroy the people of Shechem. Tomorrow, I want to destroy the people of Tevetz. The next day, I want to destroy the people of the Tower of Shechem, whatever. There's no national conflict here. It's just Avimelech, because the minute Avimelech is dead, everything stops. Everything goes away. Now, one of the things I find very amusing, okay, when this woman who of course has great resourcefulness, and she just takes this cinder block and drops it on his head, cracks his skull. So he's not yet dead, but he knows he's almost dead. Okay. What does he want? He wants his servant to stab him, to kill him, to finish him off. Okay. Why? So that no one should say he was killed by a woman. Okay. Now, first of all, the situation itself reminds me of Saul. Saul, at the end of his days, it's a very different situation. He knows he is surrounded by the Philistines. He's about to be captured by the Philistines, and he doesn't want to give the Philistines the pleasure of dragging a king of Israel through the streets, using the death of Saul to mock the nation of Israel. And so in really a very heroic way, he asks his servant to, just put to kill him. The servant doesn't want to, so he says, just put the sword there, and he falls upon his sword and essentially kills himself in order to avoid being taken in a way that would be, very, very bad, for the honor of Israel, for the honor of God, etc. So that's one example. But who was killed by a woman? Okay, Sisera. We read about him already in Judges chapters 4 and 5. And we know what happens, that Sisera is running from the battle. And when he comes to Yael's tent, she kills him. And it's very interesting because there's like Deborah, right before the battle goes, she says, if you remember, Barak is very hesitant about going out to battle. And one of the things Deborah says to him is, you're a scaredy cat. You go, I'm telling you to go. God tells you to go, you got to go. But you're such a scaredy cat. You're going to watch and see in the end, this war will be won by a woman. Okay. And in that case also, Deborah, even though she's a woman, understands that is the greatest shame. And that reminds me, clearly, this idea of the woman winning the war was considered a shameful thing to the men of that time. And yet the Bible has this here. The Bible doesn't think that being killed by a woman is a shameful thing. The Bible is mocking these great military heroes that think that they're so strong and they're so important and they're the best men on earth or whatever. And for them, the greatest shame is to be killed by a woman. And here we have two really bad guys, Sisera on the one hand, and we have Avimelech on the other, that they're killed by women. And I think it just adds, I think, some extra dimension to this idea that their whole concept of who is truly righteous and who is truly great is so distorted to think that being killed by a woman is a shameful thing, where they in themselves are the most shameful people around because of who they are and how they behave. The end of the story, we have chapter 56, verse 56, and this, of course, brings it all together. Thus God repaid Avimelech for the evil he had done to his father by slaying his 70 brothers. And God likewise repaid the men of Shechem for all their wickedness. And so the curse of Yotam, son of Jerubbaal, was fulfilled upon them. Okay, so we read that curse of Yotam, and remember, it was the fire that's going to go and consume them both. So first of all, here, literally, the people of Shechem were really burnt by fire, by Abimelech's fire. Okay, and then it is Abimelech, who's not literally killed by fire, but he's killed as he's about to set fire to a place. But what we see here is so important, and it is what we call a double causality. Okay, double causality. What does that mean? Two different causes. If you were to read this story, leave out verse 56 and 57, leave out verse 24 at the beginning, where we have these different little scriptural references to the fact that everything that happens is being directed by God in order to pay. Abimelech does evil things, he will have to pay for that. The people of Shechem do evil things, they will have to pay for that. Okay, if you remove those phrases and just read the story, it reads like a normal political story. You have a guy who's a tyrant, and at some point the people who support him stop supporting him. You have a rebellion, you have a fight, you have a war, and in a very natural way, things play themselves out. Okay, we don't have any lightning from heaven that strikes Abimelech. Who strikes Abimelech? A woman who throws a cinder block. Okay, the people of Shechem are not struck by lightning and tornadoes or I don't know what from heaven. This horrible man, Abimelech, kills them. But then scripture tells us in 56 and 57, none of this is coincidence. Yes, things do play out on the natural screen in a way that looks extremely natural. But in fact, God is behind the scenes, pulling the strings to ensure that evil is punished. And that, I think, gives us a great deal of comfort. I think when we see things happening, we don't always understand, why things are happening, how it's playing out. And very often, at the end of the day, we sit back and we could say, you know what? They had it coming to them. Or, it somehow worked out. Now, of course, it doesn't always work out. But the Bible is telling us that even in times where we won't even necessarily see how it worked out, God is there making sure that the people who deserve it get their punishment, and the people who deserve their rewards get their rewards. And it even sometimes plays out through very natural means. But this is really how it looks. Okay, so thank God we got rid of Avimelech, and we don't have to deal with him anymore, because he is clearly the most distasteful person. But I would like to just kind of summarize. Okay, one of the things about Avimelech, he is the absolute antithesis of Gideon. Gideon is probably the star of the book of Judges, and he is really an amazing leader. He did so much good, and yet he remains at heart a very humble man, so that when the nation wants to crown him king, he refuses. Then we have Abimelech, who is his son, who of course is terrible, evil in every way. But think about his name. Abimelech means my father was king. His father was not king. His father was anti-king. His father didn't want to be king. And yet Abimelech, he wants to be king so badly. All he cares about is being in charge and doing whatever he wants to do, being able to live out his evil desires, and to gain legitimacy, he crowns his father king, even though he wasn't king, so that he can be the son of the king and therefore have legitimacy as a ruler. So that's really, very much what's going on here. And I will say that one of the things that we have in the book of Judges at a certain level, and we'll see that even more at the end of the book, is this kind of ambivalence towards the idea of a king. Okay, there's a lot of balagan, as we say in Hebrew. There's a lot of chaos during the time of the book of Judges. It's close to 400 years of chaos, where we have all kinds of issues, political issues and enemies and all kinds of things happening. And we have these periodic leaders that are raised up, some more successful than others, some ruling longer than others. But you get the sense that they're giving a very local and a very temporary solution. There is no overarching unity of the nation. Issues tend to be problematic with certain tribes and not others. Judges that come up tend to solve problems in certain areas and not others. It's very local, it's very regional, and it doesn't give an overall solution to the leadership of the nation. So on the one hand, and we'll see this toward the end of the book, there's this, as the book descends into greater and greater anarchy, we have a sense, and we'll see at the end of the book, where the scripture will tell us there's no king of Israel in these days. People do whatever they want. It's the ultimate anarchy. And yet here, in the middle of the book, we have this reminder that the better leader, Gideon, didn't want to be king, and the worst leader went out of his way to be called king. And so that also gives us pause. While we want a national leader to unite everybody, there are problems with kings. And we're going to remember that, because that becomes one of the issues that are dealt with throughout the book of Kings. Yes, a king, no, a king. And of course, that comes to the forefront at the beginning of the book of Samuel. Anyway, let's just continue on now into the beginning, to chapter 10. We have in chapter 10, we have after Abimelech, we have a couple of judges that are very, very short-lived. We have Tola, son of Puah, and he rules for 23 years. We don't know anything about him except where he lives. And then there was another one, Yair, from the Gilead, okay, and he ruled for 22 years. If you remember, we talked about 40 being the normal, standard, fulfilled period of time. These are about half that time. So that's a way of saying to us, they didn't accomplish very much, okay? And then one of the things that's interesting is about Yair. What does it say? He had 30 sons who rode on 30 burros and owned 30 burros in the region of Gilead. These are called Chavot Yair to this day. Now, we already know about Chavot Yair. Chavot Yair literally means the farms of Yair, and we've met these farms already in the past. Where is it? Oh, it's in the other Bible. Okay. We met the other in the past. In the book of Numbers, chapter 32, we learned about Yair, who was a son of Manasseh. Okay. And Numbers 32, verse 41, it says, Yair, the son of Manasseh, went and captured their farms, and he called them Chavot Yair, the farms of Yair. So that says, and the Gilead, by the way, is the section of Manasseh. You remember the tribe of Manasseh is split between the part that is east of the Jordan and the part that is west of the Jordan. The part of Manasseh that is east of the Jordan is the Gilead. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here. This is a fellow named Yair. He is from the tribe of Manasseh. He is part of the section of Manasseh that's in the east, in the Gilead, and he has all these burros and donkeys and whatever it is he has, okay? And it says here, these are called Chavot Yair, the farms of Yair to this day. Now, if you look at this quickly, you may think that the farms of Yair are named after this guy, Yair, who was a judge. But we already know that the farms of Yair were named after his great-great-grandfather, Yair, who was the actual son of Manasseh. So I think we have to realize that what's happening here is this Yair is himself named after his great-great-great-grandfather, or whether who was the son of Manasseh, and it's just repeating to us that he is in that area, Chavot Yair, and this is a Manasseh area. Okay, then what we have here is, when we continue on into chapter 10, this is something that I will take up next week, because we will be starting the story of Yiftach. And what the rest of chapter 10 basically does, or Jephthah, I think, as it's said in English, what the rest of chapter 10 basically does is set the stage for Jephthah. Why is Jephthah? What is he coming for? Who is he saving? What is the issue? And the way it begins is the Israelites again did what was offensive to the Lord. They served the Baalim, the Ashtaroth, the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of Ammonites, the gods of the Philistines. Okay, they forsook the Lord and did not serve him. So this is like, oh my gosh, they are so steeped in pagan worship. Okay, and what happens is, and here we're going to see for the first time in a very serious way, the Philistines. Okay, we didn't see the extent that we didn't see the Philistines until now in such an intensive thing. And we're going to see the Philistines starting here, and they're going to take us all the way to King David, all the problems with the Philistines. But here is where we meet them for the first time in a serious way. And as a result of course, and of course, this is brought in a very, from the perspective of divine punishment. What basically happens is when the nation of Israel has forsaken God and they've gone and worshiped every idol in the book, okay, the result is that, and we see this starting chapter in verse 7, and the Lord, incensed with Israel, surrendered them to the Philistines and to the Ammonites. That year they battered and shattered the Israelites for 18 years, all the Israelites beyond the Jordan in what had been the land of the Amorites and Gilead. So that was, okay, as we said, east. The Ammonites also crossed the Jordan to make war on Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim. Israel was in great distress. Okay, now it is the Ammonites who are on the east of the Jordan, and what we read here in this part is about what's happening to the people of Gilead. Then the Ammonites cross over. When do the Ammonites cross over? At that point, it is the Philistines who are going to become much more active, because the Philistines come from the west. The Philistines, we talked about the Philistines coming from the word to invade. The Philistines invade the land of Israel from the west, so they become like this sandwich kind of thing, this pressure from both sides. The Ammonites coming from the east, the Philistines coming from the west, and of course they are crying out to God. And we will continue with the rest of chapter 10 and on to chapter 11, where we will discuss the story of Yiftach, a very interesting story indeed. Anybody have questions? Okay, everybody's smart today. That's great. Well, it was wonderful, wonderful to see you all again. And I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at CFOIC.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.